All right. Well, I'm very excited about this show, especially with some personal reasons. But we're going to talk about Alzheimer's today, and people talk about treating Alzheimer's. But you, Dr. Goodenowe, talk about restoring the brain chemistry, which is exciting for all of us. And we want to peel back the layers before we get into the science. I want to hear about the early journey. What fascinated you enough to devote your life to this amazing puzzle?
Well, I come from formal training. So my PhD is in psychiatric medicine, looking at the biochemical mechanisms of disease of the brain, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so on, depression, anxiety. And then my career, we started looking at the biochemistry and the structure. Did a lot of work in the pharmaceutical industry, looking at drug design, how molecules interact in the brain side, do supercomputing work. And from that, one step leads to another, is understanding in the 90s, this whole genomics revolution was happening. And, we had tech companies like Affymetrix, and we did, parallel sequencing technology. A lot of it was done in the animals, in the plant world, as well as in the human world. And we had this ability to look at genomics in a very thorough, comprehensive way. But we didn't have any way to measure biochemistry. Okay, so all of the proteins in your body and all the transcripts, they all come from your DNA, and it's obviously it's fixed, other than epigenetic modifications that can occur in it. But the biochemistry in our world is infinite. And so every single protein and every in your body can be ultimately mapped back to a gene sequence. Okay, and so that goes there. But the biochemistry, that the glucose and the fatty acids and all those molecules, those don't come from your genome. Okay, glucose in your body is the same as glucose in a plant. Okay, and so biochemistry is universal across all types of living organisms. And the number of molecules, biochemicals, is fundamentally infinite. It's larger than the number of particles in the universe. So I can't just create a library, say, you know what, I'm going to just go out and identify every single possible molecule, and I'm going to create a list, which is what we did with genes, right? We say we can just, and so then we get these gene chips or whatever it is, which kind of gives us some sort of comprehensiveness. And so there's no way to actually do that biochemically. So first invention was what's called ion cyclotron mass spectrometry, this non-targeted metabolomics. We use this high field magnet to measure thousands of molecules simultaneously with a very high degree of resolution, very high degree of accuracy. So we could identify molecules without any prior knowledge, so no a priori knowledge. We had this true non-targeted approach. And science was changing from pure hypothesis-driven research, where you say, I have an idea, I want to test an idea, to, hey, let's look at the data, and from the data, can we derive where this came from? And this is where this comprehensive biochemistry came in. And early on in my career, it was focused on diagnostics and therapeutics, like from a pharmaceutical perspective, because this technology is truly a universal diagnostic. And so talking about aging ourselves, like we're talking about a tricorder. We can predict when you'll die, fundamentally. We can predict virtually every disease on the planet in advance. These are called prodromes, because if your body is different, like if you're here and your friend next to you has colon cancer, well, you're physically different. So since you're physically different, there's something physically different with the two of you. There has to be a biochemical signature that corresponds to that, right? It's just obvious. And if we can't see it, we're just not looking hard enough or looking in the right place. And so this created that kind of technology. We could find that. And so this was pretty exciting. So we could very clear signatures for colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, children with autism. And so I published a whole stream of patents on this biochemical diagnostics of disease. And then, so I'll get to the point in a minute here. So the point is that, initially you thought that disease is something that happens to you, right? So colon cancer, there's going to be a tumor in your body, and this tumor is doing something. And so you think that the diagnostic test is actually measuring what the tumor is doing on the body. This is what I thought, right? We had this great technology. So I did this clinical trial in Japan with a group out of Osaka, where we looked at people before they had colon cancer, had surgical removal, were told they were now cancer-free, and measured their biomarkers before and after, and found out the biomarkers didn't change. The colon cancer diagnostic markers were the same after the tumor was removed as it was before the tumor. And so this was we weren't expecting this. We were thinking, okay, we've got rid of the tumor, the biomarker is going to go back to normal. So since we didn't believe this, we did a study again in a different university in Japan, out of Chiba University, and got exactly the same results. And this was the first really big aha moment in that we got this all wrong. We don't actually get disease, we lose health. Okay, and it's a loss of health that leads to disease. Other than a bacterial infection, but all these other chronic diseases are caused by we lose something. It's not that we get a disease, we actually lose health. And so these prodromes predict the future. So instead of diagnosing cancer, what we were diagnosing was people who had a high likelihood of getting cancer. Okay, and so this also means that we can actually change the future. So when you change the underlying physiology of the prodrome, the future changes. So your future is determined by your actions today. And so you change your actions today, you change your future. And this happens at the biochemical level. And so this technology was used in, literally I have over 100,000 blood samples in my freezers here in Temecula. And so we did like a 6,000 person clinical trial. We could detect colon cancer, at stage 1 and 0. And all this work in pancreatic cancer, ovarian, like no woman should ever die of ovarian cancer. We can diagnose it well in advance. They can have their children remove their fallopian tubes, no more cancer issues. So there's so many things. So this got very frustrating to me. So, more patents, more publications, and it really became, at some point, scientific masturbation. It's like, how smart can I be, and how many things can I do? Okay, but I'm not getting any result at the end of the day. There's an instant gratification, but nothing's actually coming of this. And because we did all this work. So this is where this concept of prodromes and understanding now we need to be able to interact with them. But what we're doing is we're doing biochemical engineering. Okay, it's basically like you do, fertilizing a plant, or you're doing a brewery in terms of making your beer and your wine. The human biochemistry of the body, we can intervene at the biochemical level, and we can change outcomes. And we can restore the health. And this is the other part of the process, is that we don't have to play God. We don't say, scientists are quite arrogant in their thinking that we develop a drug like Prozac, like fluoxetine and SSRI, and it's designed to interact with a serotonergic receptor, right? And we're going to come in with a drug molecule, and we're going to affect a receptor. We're going to block an enzyme, like a statin, for example, for HMG-CoA enzyme. And then the body has to kind of adapt to that. But the point is that the body is actually designed to heal itself if you can give it what it wants, right? And this is we have huge work with autism when we restore the neurodevelopmental process by restoring the myelination of the brain. And these children get better quite dramatically. And this is what this whole process is. So back to the Alzheimer's thing, and where it got really kind of started a whole other cascade, is when we're using this advanced technology in people with dementia. We found a class of molecules that were reproducibly low in people that had dementia. And these molecules were called plasmalogens. And me, being, formerly trained neurochemist, for crying out loud, didn't even know what these things are. So I was never taught about plasmalogens in school. And we're talking about a class of molecules that makes up literally 30% of your brain, up to 70% of the myelin sheath, 50% of the lipids in your heart, phospholipids, are plasmalogens. So when people get myocarditis and these issues that we have, high levels in your kidneys, extremely high levels in your eyes and retina. And I had no idea what these things were. So this was in the early 2000s, and I was Googling what these molecules were. And I found out, well, we didn't know about these things. Like there's literature. I think they were discovered in the 20s. And we have these rare diseases in children like leukodystrophies and peroxisomal disorders. And we know that if you have a plasmalogen deficiency, you die. Okay, basically these children die within a few years of life if they can't make plasmalogen. So we know the absolute dependence on human life. It's one of the critical molecules of our membranes and structures. So now I found out that these plasmalogens, they correlated with the severity of dementia, and then they also predicted future dementia. So then we did numerous trials, huge work in Chicago with the Rush University program of aging. And so we have all these individuals enroll in this long-term longitudinal trial, and they enroll being healthy. And Rush does extensive testing, Parkinson's, there's 19 psychometric tests they do every year. And then these individuals, they donate their brains to science when they're done. And so this project has been going on for like 20 some years. And so we have all their blood samples in our freezer. So we've run all these longitudinal studies. And with these plasmalogens, we were able to predict people who did not have dementia but would get dementia in the near future if they had low plasmalogen. The other scary thing that happened, so we did all this work, and we thought, well, you know what, this study's been going on quite a long time, and it's being done with the elderly population. We could probably measure all-cause mortality. What's the relationship between plasmalogens and all-cause mortality? Turned out to be enormous, bigger than dementia and anything else. It was like a 30-year difference in lifespan. Like a 65-year-old with low plasmalogens has the same 5-year survivability as a 95-year-old with high plasmalogens. So you can take a 65-year-old and a 95-year-old, based upon their plasmalogen levels, they have the same 5-year. So a 95-year-old has the same probability. And if you're 95 years old and you have high plasmalogens, you have about an 80% chance of making it to your 100th birthday. Like, this is just without any, and if you have low plasmalogens, you have an 80% chance of dying. You only have a 20% chance. So we're talking enormous longevity issues here.
Hey Doc, for the lay person that's listening, can you actually tell us or break it down what a plasmalogen is?
So it's a phospholipid. So your human body has about 30 trillion cells. And if you think about it, so we're not a bowl of soup, right? So how does the body compartmentalize and structure this thing called the body that started off with a single cell, right? We all started from a single cell that developed and into this complex organism that you see in front of you. But there's 30 trillion plus cells in the human body. And what separates one cell from another cell is the biological membrane. That's what houses it. It's a three-dimensional structure that, like the walls on your house. So you get this compartmentalization. So that lipid bilayer is called a phospholipid bilayer. And so the way your body makes biological walls is with phospholipids and cholesterol and some other things, right? But phospholipids are the main component. And this separates one cell from another, and it determines what goes in a cell, what goes out of a cell. But then you get further compartmentalization inside the cell. So then you have your nucleus, you have the mitochondria, peroxisomes, Golgi, endoplasmic reticulum, all these different cells, parts, and the body further compartmentalizes, just like you do in your house. So you have your kitchen separated from your bathroom, from your bedroom. Okay, so you can do different activities in different areas without affecting them. And it gets so good that we can have a refrigerator right next to our stove. So you can have one part of your house at -20 in your deep freeze, and right next to it, you could be cooking, something at high temperatures. And so this is all done by compartmentalization. So how the body compartmentalizes itself is by these biological living membranes, and they maintain them. And this is how synapses are formed and how neurotransmitters are passed back and forth. So phospholipids are what makes that membrane. So plasmalogens are a critical component of it. So when you become deficient in plasmalogens, your membranes become stiff. Okay, this is where it's linked to atherosclerosis, your ability to release neurotransmitters, the flexibility, like your baroreflex, like your heart rate variability, which is driven by the baroreflex. That's all the suppleness of your membranes are so critical. So when you lose plasmalogens, you lose that level of structure. And then the other really quirky thing about these things is that they're your body's main antioxidant. Okay, orders of magnitude more than a vitamin E or anything else. And so as soon as you get an oxidative stress, your body pumps them so that they're stored in your membrane. So you have this huge reservoir of them, and it'll dump them out. And it has what makes them special is this ether bond. It's called a vinyl ether bond, and it's like a fuse. If you think if you're a car guy, it's like a fuse, and it bursts before anything else. So rather than creating a fire, the fuse breaks. Well, you can think of plasmalogens like a fuse, and when you get oxidative stress, that vinyl bond breaks apart and neutralizes it. So it completely neutralizes peroxides, for example. The problem is you can't eat them. So you think, wow, that's great. So we have all this plasmalogens in our body. So animals like your steak and things have to have plasmalogens. So why can't I just eat a bunch of good animal products and get all the plasmalogens I need? Well, that secret that they do with the vinyl ether bond, as soon as it hits the hydrochloric acid in your stomach, which is concentrated hydrochloric acid, pH of about 2, right? Like it'll dissolve metal, like your stomach acids. Like people forget, it's the first active it's the first thing that your body uses to neutralize all the stuff that we eat, right? Before it gets digested. So these plasmalogens get burst apart. There's only really one natural source of plasmalogens in our food supply, and they're plasmalogen precursors. So think about Parkinson's when people take the drug called L-DOPA, right? Parkinson's is a disease with dopamine deficiencies, but we don't give people dopamine. We give them a precursor to dopamine. We give them a molecule called L-DOPA, which is, by the way, a supplement, right? We call it a drug, but it's a biochemical supplement. It's like N-acetylcysteine. Like that's what drug is for Parkinson's. We just call it a drug because they like to use it as a drug, but it's basically a supplement. Okay, and so same thing with plasmalogens. We can't eat the intact plasmalogen. What we do is we eat a precursor, and it's present in human breast milk. So human breast milk is one of the few places on Earth that has these plasmalogen precursors, which is why breastfeeding, specifically for the first 6 weeks first 6 months of life, has a tremendous association with increased brain development in the white matter. And so back in the early 2000s, when I discovered this plasmalogen situation and realized in the 70s we knew about the severity of plasmalogen deficiencies, and people were trying to find a way to restore them. Like there's old molecules like chimal alcohol and battle alcohol, but you had to take massive quantities of them and they didn't really work. And so I'm also a synthetic organic chemist. So my background in psychiatric medicine, but my first degree is actually in chemistry. So I actually make things. And so my job in the early 2000s was figuring out how do we get plasmalogens into the human body. So I invented plasmalogen precursors as we could structurally provide specific plasmalogens called these plasmalogen precursors. And we have two of them now that we primarily use. One with oleic acid, which is omega-9 for the myelin. It's really a calming, restorative molecule for the heart and brain. And then we have a performance-enhancing plasmalogen, which is the omega-3. So with DHA. So the DHA is pretty cool if you take this stuff. It increases the membrane fusion. So it increases all your synaptic release, which is also your neuromuscular junction. And this is where it gets really interesting in Alzheimer's disease. So that's what these plasmalogens do. So the omega-9s are for the structure of the membrane, like the plastic coating, if you will, structure of your heart. And then the omega-3s are really activating. They increase cellular activity. They increase synaptic function quite dramatically. And then that activity is what allows the brain to regrow. So now I've had a woman with multiple sclerosis who's been blind for 30 years who can now see. Okay, we've restored her vision after 30 years of blindness and MS. And with advanced MRI, we can actually watch her brain regrowing itself. And all we've done is allowed that optic nerve and the oligodendrocytes to do their job. And it starts remyelinating, and she starts redeveloping her sight from her loss, and it grows. And so when you increase the synaptic activity and you provide the building blocks for the cells to make the things that they're supposed to make, my brain, I'm 56 now, I've systematically shown my brain reversal. So we can now unambiguously, without a doubt, stop brain aging. Okay, it's quantitative immortality is what we're talking about. We have absolute unambiguous, and done this over and over again. We can see this cortical regrowth and restoring structure and function in the human brain. So that's kind of where the story goes. So then Alzheimer's disease. So your brain has many systems, and we get complicated. It's people think about it like a computer, but it's not really a computer. It's a wiring diagram. Okay, it's like a wiring harness from your car with from the front to the back, and it's how wires are connected. And there's different systems. You have two main systems, the glutamate and GABA, and there's a whole bunch of secondary systems like serotonergic, dopamine, acetylcholine. So in Alzheimer's disease, it's the acetylcholine system. Okay, so people take drugs like Aricept, which is a acetylcholinesterase blocker, or they take a agonist like memantine or something like that. So we want to stimulate the cholinergic system. What's interesting about this system is it's a kind of your master conductor. It drives your hypothalamus, it drives your cognition, but all of your neuromuscular junctions, every muscle movement, okay, is driven by acetylcholine. Okay, so the neuromuscular junction. So Alzheimer's versus Parkinson's, for example. So when people get Alzheimer's disease, you go to an Alzheimer's facility and you'll notice that they're all in wheelchairs. Okay, so the loss of muscle function and the loss of cognition really go hand in hand, and for the most part. So that's kind of where this gets really exciting. So the Alzheimer's thing. So we start talking about how we deal with Alzheimer's as a functional component, right? The process of thinking, okay, is a process of walking, right? It's a thing. It's a function of the body, right? It's not a pathology. And so when we're focusing on the neuropathology of Alzheimer's, like amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles, these things happen after the fact. These are downstream things, which they've been trying to develop drugs to remove those things with very limited success because they're not actually related to the function. And so you restore the cholinergic system, and there's, the plasmalogens are a part of it, but the choline, methyltransferase, and so there's about 4 or 5 really core, operating systems of the human body that you have to get right. Your mitochondrial function, so we do biochemical engineering. So we restore these things, we can measure them biochemically, and then the body starts and the brain starts rebuilding itself. And so,
Dr. Goodenowe, I have a question for you. I just want to, because you've done so much and you've accomplished some things that are very congruent with our belief system as Dr. Terry and I are healthcare providers in the chiropractic world. And, yet you have, and it seems so, the answers you provide are so, consistent with what we believe that is the origin of a condition or a disease instead of treating the symptoms. So where have you had your biggest conflict and debate with some of your peers or others in, that practice same or similar profession that you do? And because this is, I think, groundbreaking, but you've done it so long ago,
right?
How is it now?
I was thinking the same thing. It's why are they still treating it like they did in the 60s and 70s?
Well, now it comes down to the business and financial models of medicine. Okay, so I learned in the 2010s, and so that when we were trying to get this colon cancer screening, because we have Health Canada approved diagnostic tests for colon, pancreatic, ovarian, launched them in Japan, for example, and the infrastructure to deliver medicine. Okay, and this is where the challenge comes in our industry as a whole, right? It's how do we scale it and how do we distribute it properly? And this is why I created Prodrome to deal with that very separately. So we've got a doctor network, over 3,000 doctors. We recruit like 60 new doctors a month. Okay, so creating a parallel healthcare system is what we have to do, and we have to do it. We have to put the work in. Okay, that's one of the challenges of our industry is that sometimes we get jaded, like we want to throw stones at the government or FDA and say, you're just blocking all this stuff. But you have to give them. Doctors have to be given something, right? That's validated, distributable, and so we have quite a bit of growth. So the pushback we get from the traditional medicine field is kind of there's awareness part, but they really don't know what to do. So you got to be careful because a doctor has rules that they have to follow, right? They have to prescribe. They have guidelines. Okay, they have the organization. So you have to kind of work with them, okay, and fit into. So obviously we have a lot of practicing MDs in our network. So getting it out there, the biggest issue is having this delivery. First part, biochemistry is not taught. So we teach a lot, getting people trained in basic biochemistry, because most doctors say, oh, it's a supplement. Okay. Well, it's not just a supplement. Okay. You think L-Dopa is a supplement, but you think it's the biggest thing on earth. Well, because it's effective. It's actually restoring dopamine. Makes sense, right? And so why would that be a legitimate thing and restoring glutathione not legitimate? Like this controversy about Tylenol, for example, in autism, right? Well, Tylenol is just a nasty, nasty drug. It should never have been over the counter the first part. It's one of the most toxic things on the pharmacy aisle. Any kid who eats half a bottle of Tylenol is going to die of liver disease. Very cruel death, which is why every emergency room has, IV N-acetylcysteine to deal with acetaminophen overdoses. So the thought that, and we've known this since the beginning, so glutathione is the main detoxifier of Tylenol. And so you should be taking N-acetyl. If you do have to take Tylenol, which does work on headaches, it wouldn't be out there if it didn't have some effect, right? But you can take the antidote with the Tylenol. So take N-acetylcysteine if you take Tylenol, if you have to take it. And we've known this for a long time. Same thing with statins, like CoQ10 and mitochondrial function. The mitochondrial myopathy that people get, the muscle wasting, muscle pain, muscle aches, and these side effects get just kind of under the carpet. I just did a big lecture on Parkinson's. 30% of people with Parkinson's get what's called impulse control disorders, right? They'll get addicted to gambling, or they'll have issues because you're giving a bunch of dopamine. And how do we treat schizophrenia and bipolar? With dopamine blockers. So you can imagine, if you're giving people a bunch of dopamine, you're basically stimulating the very areas that create bipolar schizophrenic behaviors. And so about 30% of people will have these issues, right? And they don't know about these things. And so I did a big lecture on the dopaminergic, what do you think is going to happen if you just dump a bunch of dopamine on the human brain? How do you get, and there's positive and negative effects and so on and so forth. So I think back to your question is bringing awareness. My job as an industrialist is scale. Okay, like I've taken on a whole city in Canada called Moose Jaw, my hometown. We treat the whole city free of charge. Okay, and it's to deal with the epidemiological outcomes, because someone needs to do the work. And then here in Temecula, our facility will do clinical trials, like the formal type of trials. We'll have our MRI. We'll be able to run between 1,000 and 2,000 patients anytime. And so going through this proper process. And this is the final point on this part. Okay, we'll go wherever we go. This type of medicine is undervalued. Okay, because we live in this cash pay business, chiropractic, all that kind of stuff, right? And we know you get results, right? And so people, you line them up, and all of a sudden they feel better, and then it has a long-term benefit, right? So it's not just that they don't benefit from the day they were there; they have a long-term progressive benefit from it afterwards. And we have gotten kind of suckered into pricing our work on a cost basis. Okay, how much does it cost for my clinic? How much does it cost for this supplement? And that's why they're inexpensive. Versus charging for the value of the clinical outcome. Okay, ALS, for example, an average drug for ALS is $150,000 a year. Okay, that's what it costs. And they see a doctor once every 6 months if they're lucky. Okay, and all they do is they track their death. And this is a drug. These are drugs that extend the life of the person by a few months. That's what they charge. Okay, the MS drugs, you're getting $50,000, $60,000. The new drug for Alzheimer's, it does crap. Okay, and causes brain bleeds. Okay, it goes for $30,000 to $50,000 a year, with no support. That's just the bottle. Okay, that doesn't charge for, that doesn't pay for the doctor's visit, doesn't pay for any follow up and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and so people go into these advanced technologies. Think if it's a stem cell or exosomes or our biochemistry, understanding how they work. But if you can legitimately reproducibly create an outcome, okay, we should be getting to a point where we can build these things based upon the proper market size. And that allows us to actually develop a business model for our doctors going forward, that if you can get an outcome, okay, reproducibly, this is why the distribution business model has to kind of follow through. Because we always end up, I love going to A4M. I love going to the conferences. It's fun to see all the cool stuff that's out there. Like, I'm a geek. I love that kind of stuff for sure, right? But it's kind of like it's like going to the bar in Star Wars, right? It's kind of feeling it's like you're in that, and so, but it's fun, right? But I think sometimes we get into that fun stuff, and it's always this new thing, right? So and there's this kind of this dopamine rush of what's the newest thing? Is it hydrogen in water? Is it NAD? Is it this? Okay. And the thing is, they're all individually legitimate, but they work really well if you do them as a plan. And so that's where, back to the business side of things, that's why back in 2016, I basically killed all of my patents. This has to be a totally different model. We have to be able to do restorative health. And you can't go through an FDA path with 15 products. Okay, it took forever to get the drugs for HIV done. Like when you have a cocktail, from an FDA perspective, every single one has to go through individual, testing, processing, even if it's natural, right, to get through that process. And so this is why we don't have a whole lot of multimodal programs. And so we'll be doing what's called a delayed start crossover design in our clinical trial structures. And so there are legitimate ways to do proper validation on that. But this type of restorative health and a community health model that deals with people before they get a disease, right? And I tell people, it's like when my first degree, our chemistry was next to the engineering department, right? So every year the engineers did a 50-50 fundraising. And what they do is they take a beater car, they take just an old beat up car, and they take the plug out of the oil. Okay, and they drain the full oil out, and then you would bet on how many miles the car would drive before it seized up and stopped, right? So that's what they do. So, and you'd be surprised at how far a car will drive with absolutely no oil in it, right? And so you think about that. And so very simple thing of a dipstick, and you go say, we don't wait for something when we know what the level's supposed to be, okay, then we fill it up. We don't wait for the engine to start knocking to say, oh, I wonder what's causing knocking the engine. Oh, I guess I'm out of oil. I guess I should have fixed that. Well, I guess I better put some stuff in there to fix the piston rings now because, and I'll add this stuff here. And look at all this carbon buildup from this. Well, what do you think? And so this concept of prodromes is important, but this also gets into this health anxiety thing, your preventative maintenance. So my old car, when I was a young kid, okay, yeah, I checked the oil every time I got gas because it went through. But my new car, I don't check the oil every time. It's a waste of time, right? Because I know it's going to be fine. So I check it at the oil change. So now your preventative maintenance. So once you fix things, then you shouldn't have the anxiety. Like if you can measure your working system, you should be able to tailor your preventative maintenance schedule to that process. So I'm kind of, people get in these continuous monitoring and all this kind of, I think creates a whole lot of stress on people. That's unnecessary because once you get it working in your body, you should have to be able to test less frequently, right?
Dr. Goodenowe,
that's where my thing is. So sorry.
You mentioned something earlier about the economics of medicine in a roundabout way. My curiosity is because of some of the things that you've discovered, patented, and figured out, and even up to present time. Let's take a typical the colonoscopies, and then they came out with Cologuard, which is now you can just send in a stool sample and it's 98% accurate for detecting cancer early in the colon. But there must have been pushback by the industry, the healthcare industry that has advocated colonoscopies. So where does that happen for you? I mean, what kind of pushback have you experienced? Because this is like revelation to you, and it's something that is so important is to to identify before it becomes a necessity to get chemotherapy or things like that. Now you're going to get pushback. So what kind of experiences have you had there?
The pushback comes from this. Have you got a randomized controlled clinical trial, right? And they want to use this legitimate pharmacy model. In terms of colon cancer is a good example. I'm not a big fan of colonoscopies. So we showed who needed colonoscopies, who didn't need colonoscopies. But you need a colonoscopy for the right people. So colon cancer was an issue of adherence, right? People, even taking the Cologuard, which is poop in a box test versus the FIT test type thing, and that they've been developing that for a long, long time, since the 90s, Exact Sciences, and most of it's still blood. Like 90% of the algorithm just deals with hemoglobin and stool, by the way, and the other biomarkers are. So I can get into the details on that one, but it's about adherence. It's about part of the health is getting people to believe in it. And right now, the pharmaceutical model is all fear-based. People take things because they're afraid of what might happen if they don't take it, right? And they don't really know. So you don't feel better. No one feels better with a statin, okay? You don't take a statin and say, wow, I feel great. You don't. Okay? No one does that, right? But you take it because your doctor says high LDL is bad. which is a total. That's another.
Yes.
I can spend a whole day on cholesterol. Just quickly, everyone should try to get their cholesterol between 220 and 250. That's your highest long-term. Your LDL should be over 120, and your HDL should be over 50 at least. And that is like 164 countries, highly reproducible. Low cholesterol increases the risk of cancers, mortality. As soon as your cholesterol level gets under 200, okay, your all-cause mortality starts going up, and that is just a fact. Okay, it's not even arguable. And so this whole statin industry. But the point is, on this concept though, is that they've convinced people, okay, with very fishy data, that LDL, like oxidized LDL and C-reactive protein, is an issue. Right? That's true. But there's a big New England Journal paper. It's shocking to me that these really good studies get done, but then they get ignored. And that was the big lesson. Okay, just good science doesn't actually, even really high level, legitimate New England Journal of Medicine, large study. So the New England Journal of Medicine published a major paper, I think it was 2007, like quite a while ago, showing that the benefit of a statin for cardiac outcome was only present in people who had C-reactive protein levels over 2. If you had low levels of C-reactive protein, there was no clinical benefit of taking a statin. Okay, highly clinically legitimate. So it basically says that, hey, if you have high levels of oxidative stress, oxidized LDL, yes, it's a bad thing because it goes in through the endothelial wall, creates atherosclerosis. Yes, we all get that. But if you don't have oxidative stress, your cholesterol has no relevance. Do you guys know, like, if you have a familiar hypercholesterolemia, so these are people with cholesterol levels between 400 and 600. They have a longer lifespan than the regular population.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no mortality, there's no increased mortality. There is a slight increase in cardiovascular mortality because if you have high levels of that cholesterol, LDL specifically, you have and you then have some probability of having some oxidized stress. Okay, it's going to be amplified in that population. So I always make a joke about two people, like the oncologists, but cardiologists, all they care about is that you don't die of cardiovascular disease. Okay, if you die of cancer, that's fine. But look at his heart. You know, look at that. Like you die of anything else, but so as long as you don't die of cardiovascular disease, they don't really care. So you could die of anything else, but look at that. And that's my joke about those guys.
Doc, I got go back to what you said something about fear, and we actually had a guest who had stage 4 breast cancer, and they wanted to do chemo and radiation, and insurance was going to pay. I think she ran that numbers, it was like $240,000. Yet she went a different route and went to call holistic, a better route. She paid $87,000 and was totally cured. And the frustration was she got so much pushback from the MD, so much pushback from people were yelling at her. As a neuroscientist, how do we break the fear to look at alternatives that actually might save us?
I think so cancer is a challenge. I have personal experience that with my dad. Okay, my dad got diagnosed with advanced diffuse B-cell lymphoma, about the size of a quart, wrapped around his kidney and his ureter and all that kind of stuff. Probably from from post-COVID, the turbo cancers that we're experiencing post-COVID type of thing. So he was given 2 months to live because it was growing so rapidly. And but cancer, and we were able to fix the cancer, okay, biochemically. And so all cancers are the same, whether it's breast cancer or liver cancer. It's the cell becomes like an anarchist, basically. They don't behave the way they're supposed to behave, but they're all your cell, right? It's still the cancer is interesting because liver or a lung cancer cell is your cell. It's you, right? And it's lost its biochemical bearing, and so that success rate. So I do a big lecture on breaking cancer, on the biochemistry of cancer. So I treated him with no chemotherapy, shrunk it down. Biggest thing for him to realize to be healthy during his healing process, and so cancer is something absolutely do. The predictability of the BRCA gene, I present on all that kind of stuff. So the pushback is that first of all, people have egos, right? They'll have, they're experts, right? They go through expert training, and no one wants to know, think about, you go through 20 years, you've been experienced, and you have certain levels of success, and some young buck comes up and telling you, well, everything you just learned, you've just been an idiot for being in school so long, right? It doesn't go over very well to anybody. No one wants to hear that, right? I don't like to hear that either. I try to be open-minded, but you learn things, and our knowledge becomes a bias, right? Because we become less and less adaptable. And you built a career around things, like you have mortgages, you have things to do, right? And so you have hospitals that have bills to pay, and and it's all, the thing with electric cars, for example, the reason why there's such a huge issue with those, apart whether they're valid or not, okay, apart from that, just from the infrastructure perspective, if everyone switched over to electric cars, well, oil changes would be gone, the whole petrochemical, all the gas stations, like what happens to all those guys, okay? Like, look at the economic trickle-down effect of just saying instantly you're going to turn off all, because the engines don't run on oil, all this other, so it has huge impacts, like real impacts in people's lives. So I think what I've done is work with people that, be respectful of that professional in that space. You'll find people in those spaces that are open to it. Okay, and because I have leading neurologists and leading oncologists in our system, okay, for sure. And it's a gradual process. And you see, and the problem is they always get us into this anecdotal, it's anecdotal. It's just, these are just anecdotal case series type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, then you got to, there's rules to the game. So we got to play within the rules. And so that's what building the infrastructure the biggest problem is that these cool things that we have, the financial resources required to validate them to that level, usually is beyond what these type of companies can do. Take N-acetylcysteine, for example. Who's going to invest $10 million in N-acetylcysteine when you can buy it for 2 cents a pill? So some guy goes and proves this stuff, and there's lots of good clinical papers on that, but how do you protect it? That's my problem. So the plasmalogen is a good example. So here's a cool story. So I discovered these plasmalogens, and because they're natural molecules, and the synthesis and the precursors are natural as well, right? Like human breast molecules, like plasmalogen precursors, you can't patent naturally occurring molecules. Okay, so in order to patent them, you have to create a non-natural molecule. So what I did was I created these gimmick molecules. So I created these. So I took another natural molecule called alpha lipoic acid, which is a molecule that is necessary for the part of the pyruvate dehydrogenase pathway. And so I just put lipoic acid to the plasmalogen precursor at the SN3 position. New molecule. I could patent the molecules, which I did, and then now that becomes an IP. So it's okay. This is great. Shop it to all the drug companies and did a whole bunch of preclinical work and so on and so forth. But the IP protection, the problem is that you can kind of get around that. So that's why we've had to switch from an IP protected drug model to a service model. Okay, in terms of the protocols, the infrastructure, the blood testing, the MRI, the knowledge of how to put the pieces together. That's what we train through our doctor network. That can be validated and packaged and marketed at a price, so that our doctor network, okay, they'll be the leading individuals when these things become reimbursable, and eventually they'll be free, because the U.S. healthcare budget. So people talk about, look at Pfizer, look at, you talk about Apple, or you talk about Google. Well, the human health, the healthcare budget for the United States is about $5 trillion a year. That's direct, $5 trillion in direct costs per year for healthcare in the United States. That doesn't include secondary costs. That doesn't include, a mom who has to stay home to take care of their autistic child. Doesn't include any of that stuff. These are just direct healthcare costs. If we can reduce the incidence of these diseases by 50% or more, okay, you're talking a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Okay, it's bigger than any of these other industries out there by far. And the value is that at a programmatic level, like the colon cancer programs or breast cancer screening programs, it becomes free, but the logistics of delivering has to get worked out. How do you work with a community? Like we have our own little bubble of advanced thinkers and tinker. We like to tinker with things, but you go down the street, and we all do that when we go to our family gatherings, right? Like, not everyone in our family believes this either, right? They're going to say, well, my doctor says this, right? So working with real regular people is and that's what the community program in Moose Jaw is all about. So it takes a while, and there's going to be early adopters, and it's growing pretty rapidly. The world is really open to this. COVID really changed people. It created this dichotomy, for example. Like, so clearly there was like a split in thinking in the population, but it kind of unmasked a lot of things for people, and it's created a critical mass of individuals who are really, they're looking at things differently. They assumed, I think everyone just assumed the government was looking after us. Everyone kind of assumed we did these things, and no one really knew that we just don't have them. Like, remember, most people live pretty healthily for the most part. They don't complain. They get through their lives. And if something's wrong with you, you're not paying attention. Okay, who pays attention to colon cancer screening? Who doesn't have colon cancer? Okay,
right.
Who pays? You don't pay attention to that stuff, right? You just kind of assume, oh, someone's taking care of that, and then you realize, whoa, no one's taking care of this stuff. There's the Wizard of Oz. The guy's not there, man. Okay.
Hey, Doc, I want you touch on some for the when you go out of your think tank and you go to your neighborhood. What's the strategy to somebody listening right now that has a family history of Alzheimer's, dementia in their family? What's a strategy that somebody that if you were to go down and talk to your normal neighborhood, what's a strategy somebody could do right now after listening to the show to start changing their trajectory?
So I focus on restoring their health. Like, I've had people with Alzheimer's.
Define that. What do you mean by restoring their health?
So people want to feel better and stronger. They want to get their independence back. Okay. And it's their caregiver. So it's going to be, Alzheimer's is actually quite a challenge because you don't actually treat the Alzheimer's patient. You treat the caregiver. Okay. No one with Alzheimer's is going to watch your podcast and say, oh, I'm looking for a solution for Alzheimer's. Right?
No, but people that have a family member that died from it thinking that they're going to get it may be listening.
Correct. And then we can look at the predictability of it. But when you have a family with an Alzheimer's patient, it's going to be the caregiver that you treat, in a sense, and bring them up. And you have to work with the codependency that the relationship has developed, and then bring their independence back. I've had individuals that were under full conservatorship that now run their companies again. Okay, they've restored their cognitive skills to the point that they've actually taken their companies back. Okay, so we know unambiguously we can restore cognition, mobility, and function in people with Alzheimer's disease. It takes work. So the simple issue is, for Alzheimer's disease, biochemistry, get your biochemistry right, food, nutrition, and these plasmalogen precursors, and you'll see these improvements. And it happens. So what we're doing in Moose Jaw, the problem with, we have these, even if I have 3,000 doctors or more now, they're dispersed everywhere. So you get a doctor in Dallas, you get a doctor in, Pittsburgh, and they'll have a cohort of individuals that are getting better. And there's but it's kind of isolated. It's like little pockets here and there. Moose Jaw, we're creating this situation where it's a defined geographic. There's like 35,000 people in the city, about 50 in the region. And they start seeing each other. Okay. They're parents with these autistic kids that are going back to school. Okay. And they talk locally, and but it's taken a year. We've been doing this for over a year now, and we've had major successes, but the community takes a while. But they start looking at this, and they start saying the fear of missing out, saying, well, they'll see people with post-chemo going back, preaching at church and being fully functioning. And then they'll start saying, okay, well, maybe that can be me. So it's about mentorship. Okay. People need to be able to see someone else, and then they kind of can follow that. Like, there's going to be some people who don't need the mentorship. They'll just do it themselves. Right. And that's the first people that come through our doors. But the rest of the people, it's a mentorship thing. They see someone else getting success, and they go, oh, wow. And it's local, right? It's not It's not Instagram and Facebook. Okay, that kind of gets people to your podcast and our webinars. But it's when they go to the coffee shop or they go somewhere else and they see someone they haven't seen for a couple of months, and they go, "Whoa, you're looking pretty good. What's going on with you?" And then they chit chat, right? And they talk about things, and then they come in. And I think there's no fast tracking that process. Okay, human basic interaction takes time. So that part, I would say to any individual is look at some case studies. You can come to our site, like drgoodenowe.com, and our Perpetual Health. There's case studies and the science behind it. But is that you want to respect life. This is the other pet peeve of mine in the elderly population. This concept that, oh, you've lived a good life, or this concept of retirement. Okay, no one should ever retire. Okay, retirement is basically putting a time. You're actually calculating the date of your death, basically saying, okay, I'm done. I got 10 years. Do I have enough money to live for 10 years? Well, no. When you're 90, you should be doing more than you were at 85. Okay, you should never stop developing what you're doing, right? And you have to have a purpose in life. You have to get up and have a reason. And so this appreciation of life. And we've really, I think what's happened in the world is that the healthcare, like 80% of the healthcare costs occur in the last few years of life. And governments are running out of money. And so they're glorifying euthanasia at this point in time. I'm coming from Canada. Medical assistance in dying is like the second leading cause of death in the whole country. It's crazy. Okay, absolutely crazy. They're killing people left, right, and center where I live.
Oh my God.
Okay, and so, but it's dehumanizing us, and so you should fight for your life. Life is precious. It's a gift that we've been given, and you should fight till the end as long as you want. And getting people's purpose back, because, and you guys know this, okay? No amount of science, no amount of high tech can keep a person alive if they don't want to be alive. If someone has given up on life, nothing is going to, if you want to die, you will die. Okay. And so if you want to live, well, then you got to fight for it. Okay. And you got to think about it, and you have a reason for it. You have to have a purpose. You have to have some excitement to get up in the morning. And so we got to give the elderly purpose and get them involved. Okay. Because what are you going to do? Just play another game of canasta? Like, you have to kind of get up, right? Like, you can get a reason to get involved in the community. So I think we miss that component of things, and we live in this world of internet where we think we have thousands of people doing this and that, but they're just they're not engaged. And so I'm kind of the anti person of we're kind of a bricks and mortar, high labor type organization. Like, you got to get people, and when talking about chiropractors, people that actually touch people, and you're with people, right? You have to have a love for people, and they're all different types and characters that you and some you don't, that are difficult, and some that are easy, but they gradually find their place. And I think that part is what we kind of try to infuse into people, that you're worth it. And so that's the other big thing. People don't think they're worth it. They don't really think, a lot of the dementia patients, they don't think they're worth saving. Okay. And so, but if you can actually love that person and they feel valued, then they start actually valuing their own life. And then they start doing things that are healthy. They get up, they go for coffee with their friends. So if they're going to go for coffee with their friends, well, they're going to get dressed now. Oh, maybe they're going to wash their face. And so they're going to do a bunch of other things. And they're going to actually walk around a little bit. And so all these secondary things, like these social interaction things that we talked about, well, they have a lot of spin-off issues. And then they want to do these things to be better. And they say, okay, here's good nutrition. And they stick with it long enough that they can actually see these benefits. And you need to capture these things, like with video or with our assessments, because people always remember themselves well. They never remember themselves sick. And so if you don't say, hold on, look at who you are right now. What's your baseline right now? This is what your function is. Don't forget where you are now. And then in a month, they say, whoa, I'm doing a whole bunch more. Well, you're still not doing what you did when you're 30, but you did a heck of a lot more than you did a month ago. And then you got to calculate a win. You got to call a win a win. And so, but if they don't recognize, because if they say nothing less than me skipping rope and rock climbing is a failure, well, then every success is still a failure. Well, it's not enough. No, it's not enough. It's they're looking for some massive miracle in their life, and that steals their own successful trajectory from them, because they need to feel the win. They need to feel the success that they're achieving. And we can do that with biochemical markers, but really the physiological ones are important. Like we can show them, we're fixing the biochemistry, but people need to feel it in their own world.
A quick question, and you are obviously a healthcare provider and a motivator, which I believe is very important in the world of healthcare. Is you don't just as chiropractors, even though they think that we're just working on the physical or maybe even the nutritional, but we're also really working on inspiring the patient. And I appreciate what you have just shared. You mentioned something earlier too that aroused some curiosity, and that is, do you feel that of the last 5 or 6 years, are people becoming more aware of what you're doing in the world of nutrition, let's say, or identifying conditions before they become, a big blowout problem, or are people getting sicker because of what's gone on the last 5 or 6 years?
Well, we're getting close to a tipping point. Okay, our critical mass is growing quite rapidly, and the doctor networks, because doctors talk with other doctors, and they're looking for things. Because no one goes into medicine without wanting to help people. Okay, like they want to, and you get tough cases like ALS and things like that. No one wants to be a failure, and so when these doctors saying, look at the success I'm getting, and their practice is getting better. So that's the viral process, and that's happening at an exponential rate. Okay, so that's really positive. And then the patient engagement is also happening at an exponential rate. We're getting close to the tipping point, especially like in something like autism. On the other side of the equation, yes, people are absolutely getting sicker. Okay, we have not hit the full wave of the post-COVID situation. Okay, what COVID has done is it's like knocked everyone down 20-30%. It's taken 20 to 30% of mitochondrial function across the board, knocked everyone down. Okay, and now we're just waiting for age to and time to start hitting people, and you're seeing, and so we have a lot more young people feeling less functional than before. All these chronic diseases were kind of old person issues, right? And it kind of got, I'm just getting old. But when 30, 40-year-old people feel like crap, well, it's not getting old. These people don't feel, I'm just getting old. No, they feel something's wrong. Okay, I'm not functioning. Okay, they're different. They don't chalk it up to age anymore. And we're seeing a lot of those individuals saying, okay, this is not right. Something is just not adding up here. And so we are definitely seeing a far, far sicker population. And that's reaching its own tipping point. People are coming to the realization, like, what? It's not working. Again, and I think some of it's subconscious at this point in time, and some of it's really conscious. But I think as a general rule, people are kind of saying, how can I have an iPhone? How can I have all these things that I have as massive technologies? And we haven't done dick on these chronic diseases. Right. Like, really, we haven't. Yep. And so someone's got, like, how can we have, SpaceX and all this kind of stuff, and we can't deal with simple diabetes? Like, seriously? Like, and so I think people are kind of starting to add up in their head. They're starting to really question this basic philosophy, but then there's no replacement. Okay, right. You can't just go to people and say, hey, it sucks to be you, Right. So you have to, so we need to be organized. So what we've done in our overall industries is we've lacked organization, we've lacked coherence, we've lacked some means of. And so I'm agnostic, right? I think of what we've developed as these core platforms: biochemistry, some nutrition, objective measurements with MRI, but we're agnostic. So now you can plug in your favorite technology on top of that, but at least we can create some sort of basic structure of objective networking, right? And the doctors can all get involved in this thing. Another one of my pet peeves is biobanking your blood samples. Like you go, you get 5 vials of blood you send off to Quest or LabCorp, and they just throw it all in the garbage. Okay, you don't have, and so we biobank everyone's blood sample that goes through our system, right? So you have your blood sample for the next 100 years. And so if you're healthy today, right, and then you get COVID or you get something, you say, geez, what the heck happened to me? This happened to my dad. because I've been tracking for years, right? And then he gets this B cell, and I can look at his old blood samples and go, holy crap, look what. And so then I got to fix these. I got to put these things back to where they were. But so this kind of tracking process, this is what kind of, when I talk about having a replacement strategy for people, that's what I'm missing. People do recognize there's something is wrong, but we haven't created a legitimate replacement model for people. And that's because there's no place for people to go. Like, they have to go to the doctor, they have to go someplace. Like, where are they going to go? And we have these functional med doctors around the world, and they can only do so much, right? Like, they're not, and so I think that's what we as an industry have to kind of struggle with, and just say, okay, my job is to slowly get us organized and be open-minded to what works. So there's some really cool stuff I could do with the lasers. There's some, I'm working with some light therapy lenses, and so there's not, like, what we do is kind of like I call it the ground zero. Like, you get the biochemistry right. It's kind of like, you can't take some malnourished person from the sub-Saharan Africa and put them in boot camp and expect to get a soldier out of the person, right? Like you need to be able to actually deliver. Like, so when you stimulate the body and you do the exercise that you're supposed to do, your body has to be able to actually deliver on what you're asking it to do. Okay, and so if you give an exosome, which is giving some new genetic material or young genetic material, and it's going to stimulate a cell, well, that cell has to act. Or you give stem cells. They tell people stem cells are like throwing a bunch of puppies in with old dogs, and all of a sudden these old dogs see these young puppies and say, well, I want to be a puppy again, and so they start acting like a puppy. And so, but you need to be able to, those old dogs need to actually be able to perform like the puppies that you're putting in there, and so they can sustain it. And so what we do is really at the base level is, can we enable the core infrastructure to do its job, so that these other technologies that have true validity, they can be used in the right circumstance, in the right person, in a highly reproducible way. And I think that's kind of what my passion is, other than the science type, which is still cool, and working with these rare disease children, and I get an opportunity to work with so many amazing people, is really try to build this infrastructure.
Dr. Goodenowe, we're going to wind down the program, but we always have this section that makes light and fun of some things that may be personal to you, that's off of such an intense subject like this. We call it the rapid fire questions. Sure. And although we probably have a ton of other questions for you based on our original subject matter, we're going to end the show with 5 questions that you would have to answer in a few words or less, which that may be difficult.
I'll try.
But if you're ready, here we go. What is one character trait or personality type that you noticed today during your scientific journey that you had when you were a young child?
Well, curiosity is the number one thing. Is just really, and realizing that the more you know, the more you don't know, right? And we have to unlearn to learn. Like, we have to really be sensitive to our own biases. Like, as we educate ourselves, we really have to knock down our own bias, our own cockiness, and we have to realize that we could be wrong, we could find solutions, and I think that's the biggest thing right there.
Question number 2: if there was one lifestyle variable, sleep, diet, movement, stress, and you wanted to see a 30% effect on cognition, which one would you pick?
Oh, easy. Muscle density. So absolutely, the number one thing,
really?
maintaining skeletal muscle mass with life is the most important thing. It prevents diabetes, it reduces cancer rates, it improves cognition, maintaining skeletal muscle mass with aging. So regular resistance training, go for your walks, go cardiovascular training all you want. Okay, but twice a week, lift weights. Like, people have to be lifting weights. Okay, maintaining skeletal muscle is the number one thing of aging that you have to do.
I'm screwed. Dr. Spencer is going to live forever.
I love Dr. Goodenowe. He's the best. Question number 3. What is, if there's a possibility, What is the dumbest question you've ever been asked about your work? And what would your answer be? Obviously biting a lip there, but
Yeah. Well, it's actually, it's a dumb question in retrospect, but it's not a dumb question when you do it the first time. And the biggest question I have is, okay, I'm going to take these supplements. How long do I have to take them? Okay, when can I stop taking them? Okay, and then I say, well, when do you stop eating protein? Okay, when do you stop drinking water? Okay, like you're a human biochemical system, like you are a bioreactor, like you're basically taking hydrocarbons in your body, like your furnace, and you're breathing out carbon dioxide and you're peeing out water. Okay, and so it's forever. So if you want, and I think people, because they think, again, they think of something, they think of food and nutrition almost like a drug, right? Oh, I'm gonna take it till I get better. Okay, and then once I'm better, I don't need anything anymore. Right. Well, no. The reason why you got better is because you're taking these things. So you don't stop. And so it seems like such an innocent question, and they go, yeah, I guess
I love your earlier your car analogy with the oil. I'm definitely going to use that on most of the male patients that come in because they would totally understand that. Yeah. That was great with the dipstick. The old days when we would look at a dipstick every time we would stop and get cat. All right, question number 4. If you weren't a scientist or an entrepreneur, what odd or maybe surprising profession would you secretly have chosen or wanted to do?
Oh, easy. I'm a farmer. I'm a farm kid. I grew up on a horse's back in a hockey rink. Okay, and actually that's my main love. I built 2 farms to finance the companies I built, and I built the farms up, and then I sold the farms, and so I'm a scientist out of guilt. Okay, really, if I was be truly selfish, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on a tractor on my farm. Okay, and I would be just because I love people, but I don't kind of really like people that much. So I love being around them, but I truly, you have to have love in this world. But so the thing is, but you can't unknow what you know, right? And so I have these like these plasmalogens. There's kids dying, like there's literally kids. And they're alive today. They're growing. They're developing. Their brains are normal, and this is what really drives me crazy. It gives me so many sleepless nights. So the one rare disease I work with a lot of children's rare diseases. We can bypass them. I've got some really interesting studies in Down syndrome happening. But one particular one, RCTP, so rhizomelic chondrodysplasia punctata. It's a disease that has a mutation in plasmalogen manufacturing. Everything else with these kids is normal. Okay, but they have a genetic mutation that they can't make plasmalogens, or they can make very little plasmalogens. Our molecules are the absolute antidote to this disease. Okay, you take our plasmalogens, you don't have the disease. Okay, it's that effing simple. And I have the number of families who don't take this supplement, okay, because the neurologists or whatever else, and they'll just kind of, it's like, well, I'm just going to do what my doctor says. Says, yeah. Don't blame me because my child died. I just did what I was told. Like seriously, it's like, okay, and so we have these children that are in our system, and they're alive because of what I manufacture every day. And so I can't be on my tractor at home because until these things get out there, okay, I can't. You can't unknow these things, and it's a big challenge. It's really, you want to help people, and they don't want to help themselves. And and you have to kind of be patient and take love with it. But that's so me, from a personal perspective, I'm a farm kid. I love being in the dirt, and I love the time out there. So
cows and chickens over people. I got you. I'm with you on this. All right.
Well, if you're on Instagram, it's all cats and dogs, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, last question. This has been fantastic. Last question. What is one book or film or maybe piece of art that you wish everyone would maybe carry in their back pocket?
Oh my goodness. There's a couple. I've always gravitated to Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and the old one was basically this purposefulness, right? It's a great lesson on where we are today, highly predictive. And then the Buddhist aspect. I'm born, raised Christian in my life, and now with quantum mechanics. But Buddhism and the Bodhidharma is The Zen Teaching of Bodhidharma is an incredible little book that just kind of is a reality check that what's purposefulness. Okay, those philosophical things that kind of get you out of your ego, right? And you really get yourself this concept of providing service. And service has so much power. Okay, we live in, I would tell people self-help is killing us. This concept of everyone trying to get self-help and what's good for them, and they think that that's actually going to benefit them long-term in their life. And you really benefit from the people around you that you help. Okay, and to live a life of service creates such an amplification of yourself. And so if you want to have an ego in your lack of ego, basically, in the fact that you can just open your heart up to people and help, and the universe comes back to you. I think we've lived in this thing, we've stuck people into, take what's yours, get your piece of the pie, self-help on this, and you're worth it, it's all about what you're worth, right? And really, the only worth any of us have is our reflection in others. Okay, otherwise we don't exist. Okay, we really don't exist except in how we reflect on others around us. I think understanding that kind of, and the strength and power that comes from it, because then you don't have to worry about it. You go to bed at night, you get up in the morning, you do what you can during your day. Okay, you put an honest effort into what you do, whether wherever you are, and you sleep well at night. And people get caught up into the complexities of this world, and it creates the stress of this world. And a lot of the stress is from our wanting things for ourselves. And I think that, in a really weird way, gives you much more strength. I think that's kind of, when you find a right place to put that, and this gives you the purpose we talked about early on, right? Because if your purpose is only for yourself, that runs out pretty soon. Like, are you going to live by yourself on an island, or what are you going to do? So finding this purpose, if your purpose is helping others, that's never ending. Yeah, that's an infinite purpose. That never, you can be 300 years old and still do that purpose, right? And I think those are the things that, and so this longevity and immortality, if you're going to live a long time, you got to figure out what the hell you're going to do for a long time. So if you want to live to be 200, what the hell are you going to do when you're 150? What's your plan? Okay, is it how many rounds of golf can you play? You have to be you have to have some purpose, and so you have to think of a purpose that's going to sustain you. It can change, different things will happen in your life, but something that has enough longevity to it that can be beyond your livability, right? So you have to have plans in your life that are longer than your lifespan.
Yes, agreed. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I know that Dr. Terry and we probably have more questions that we could have asked you about the bulk of the conversation, but maybe another time. But thank you so much for your time. This was really, really enlightening and very congruent with what we feel.
I'm excited to work with you guys, and just it's a fun world out there. And what's so cool is you find each other. We actually, this world is funny. The more you live in it, you realize less and less coincidences there are. You find people, and something draws us together, and yes. It's pretty exciting to see. So really happy to be here.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.